Alright, so welcome back to the main scene. So a couple of things that we need to discuss here regarding like materials, render settings. So we did discuss a couple of things here already. Let's open up. So let's first talk about the environment stuff. So here you can see I have a environment ROP and a firelight ROP. And essentially that's these renders. If I look in here in it's this one and it's this one. So actually I split it up. The reason why I split this up in one with sort of the light going on here and the separate one was because initially this was really slow to render with this light. Like with this light on, this took quite long. And it's still like this is like if you look at the undenoised version here, you can see there's quite a lot of noise going on here, and of course this was not super useful. Usable. While this one, that's because of all this environment light going on, because there was a lot of lights also on the ground here, etc., etc., etc. Just made it really slow. This one was really fast because there's not really a lot of light going on, just a little bit of HDRI. And this one is pretty much noise free. Well, it's not noise free, but there's a little bit of noise going on, but it's not too bad. So you can see also a bunch of nice scattered stuff going around. Oh, that's by the way something I didn't show you yet. That's I think it's one of these. There's dead shrubs. I think it's this one. You see a bunch of dead shrubs being scattered. So those are also being rendered. So I rendered those separately, and this one this was so slow. What I just ended up doing was I just rendered it with some noise, just doing a little bit of denoise here, which looks a little bit doesn't look perfect. It wiggles around a little bit, but you could see it as a heat distortion, I guess technically. And then we just sort of merging those on top of each other. So then you got a sort of a nice hybrid of the two, and then you don't really have a problem there. So that's why that is split up. And again, that's using the light that I was. And you can see this one, the regular environment only used 16 samples, and this is 96 and was really slow. And I think it's set here up here for half resolution. I did end up rendering a full resolution at some point. But yeah, so that's why I did it like that. So you might also notice sort of these glowing sort of amber things, which I can, if I shuffle them out here, you can see this is the path. So what I just did for that is in each of these the models here, that's where the materials are located. I have a separate material here, which is wood ashes emissive. Let's preview it, and it might take a little bit to open. This is this thing. I got that from Substance Source, so it's a material thing from Substance. I just exported it, and then I'm putting it here into OCIO color space because it was giving me sort of a purplish hue when I didn't do that. I did color correct it a little bit here, and then I'm binding the density, which is again the stuff that we painted on it where we wanted the fire to be, and then multiplying it, and I'm putting it in the emission intensity. And then that way you get sort of a emissive look on your environment. So if we just open this up, I think in some places it might break, because again, like those paint stops seem to sometimes have broken. So some of the paint there might look a little bit different than the stuff that I did in Nuke. Alright, you can see this one here is broken at the moment. So I just noticed that with the heavier files, sometimes these paint stops might break for some reason, but we can fix that, and you can kind of see what's going on there. So that's I think that's the blackened street trunk. That's this one. All right, so let's have a look. And then over here you have the tree. Here we have the render geo. So let's see if that's actually the one. Yeah, so that's grabbing the render geo, that's this one. Then layout, we have the blackened tree trunk. Let's look through our camera. Blackened tree trunk is the one. And let's see if it actually has the color there. Yeah, you can see for some reason color there is disappeared. So now let's look up here. And right, yeah, okay. This needs to, I did move around some stuff later down the line. So you can see this was linked to a place where it wasn't painted yet. All right. So now I should, so now we have this, here we have this painted stuff. You can see we can just paint in wherever it is that we want to emit fire. And that's also where the light is going to emit from. And I was like, some of the stuff in the scene might be a little bit messy, but that's because I was just working and just creating new layers. So some of the renders there might not even, like the exact settings for that might not even be in the file. Okay, so you can see now we get the embers there. So and that's going to be the same place where the fire would emit if we were to do XCM solver here now, which is. Let's just not do that because it's going to be a little bit slow. So yeah, we have that one. And then we have the firelight. So we also have this firelight thing here. I actually have this in two contexts. So you can see over here, if I just dive in there and go look through the camera. You can see this is quite a bit slower. I don't think I rendered this from this ROP. I think what I ended up doing is here I have a separate thing here called fire. Let's just have a look at that one, which is actually set up here in lob context. I'll get into that in a little bit. Let's wait for this to render. All right, you can see here, this is actually what I ended up rendering in. I think for this one, I turned off those emissive things because those are not here because I already had those. Like if you have a look at here, they're not over here. It's because I already had them from over here. So that's why they are not there. But you can see here, we have the, have that stuff going on. So initially what I ended up doing is like I was first just rendering it from here, but then I had some issues with rendering the scattered ground things, which might be a good thing to have a look at right now. So I did the twig scattering. I did those in Solaris here. As you can see, here's a bunch of twigs. This is not the layout that they were initially in because the paint shop here broke again. Sometimes this paint shop just broke, and that's why in some places in the scene, if you come across something being frozen like that, that's why I did it, to avoid stuff just completely breaking. But in here, I'm just painting stuff. Scatter and line. So scattering some stuff, setting some p-scales here. So multiplying the p-scale. And then over here, I'm randomizing an index attribute. An index attribute is used by Solaris to set random variant. So if you're in SOPs and you use a variant attribute, for example, to copy different things, in here it's an index attribute. So just renderize it between 0 and 4, and then I'm casting them to an integer because they need to be an integer. So then you have over here you have an index attribute. Index. All right, there we go. There's an index attribute. And then you can see we get some twigs from it. And I should probably, if I go in here, so if I go into this fire thing, in here I just had the whole node tree copied and pasted. What I can do instead is I can just paste the out thing here, and that should also work. And if I highlight this, it's gonna be a little bit slow. Yeah, you cannot see it in the viewport yet, but there's actually fire going on there now. And if I turn this to Karma, right, You can see we have fire instanced on the same twigs. And you can see here it's overly bright. So that's what I was explaining before, where I wanted this for the environment. I wanted a little bit more light. Over here, I have a different material. That's the one I actually ended up rendering. So this is the fire for the environment. And then the other part here is the light on the environment. It's gonna take a little bit to initialize. It still wasn't overly bright, but it was... Let's look through the camera. You can see this is really slow, so that's why I split it up. But yeah, that's why I did it like that. Now you might ask, okay, why did I do this instancing like this? Well, there's a problem with instancing stuff like this in like if you just load it in the object, there's a problem where it just makes it a lot slower. Maybe I can do a demo in an empty scene. So empty scene here. Let me just let's do grid. Let's make it 50 by 50, and let's do 150 by 150. So a bunch of we can just do, I guess, let's just scatter points on it instead. Scatter some points. Scatter, right, a bunch of points. Let's copy some stuff to this. Let's do attribute randomize. P-scale, or not P-scale. Let's do variant. Sorry, variant. Let's do 3 variants. Let's do attribute cost because we need it to. So now this is a float, as you can see. We want this to be an integer, 60-bit integer. Now it's an integer. Now on the copy to points, we can enable variant backend instance, and let's make a couple of things. Let's make a pig. Let's make a box. And let's do rubber toy. All right, attribute create variant. This one is going to be variant 0. This one's going to be variant 1. This one's going to be variant 2. Merge it in. And put it on copy. Right, so we've got a bunch of stuff going on. Maybe you want to grid. Maybe let's do even more. Let's do attribute create. Let's make P-scale a little bit smaller. Right, so we got a bunch of stuff going on here. It's pretty fast. Now let's do go in out. Let's make a lob network, and let's do scene imports all. Let's see if it's actually also slow. All right. All right, over here now it's not too bad. Let's see how it is if we really increase this, like 50,000. And let's link to our second input. All right. It's reasonably fast now. All right. It's oh my god. All right. Okay, I was during before. All right. It's not reasonably fast. It's reasonably slow. Let's wait for this to stop crashing. All right, so we're back. It was it completely froze. Let's try it again. So the problem with this thing is just that it will just try to build these instances. All right, there we go. Is this with the 50,000 yet? No, not yet. All right, let's put it to manual. Let's put 50,000. Let's have a look at it first in sub context, because I think that should, right, yeah, that's relatively fast. Now let's put it to manual. Let's go to second view, and now it is probably going to break again. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you're starting to see the problem here. Yeah, that's going to crash again. So I'm going to open it again and I'm going to show you. So you're kind of starting to see the problem here. Why this in sort of loading impact geometry here in slabers is not great. So let me just open up another instance of Houdini, and I'm just going to do it the other way, and then it will probably work just fine. All right, so we're back. Okay, so now what we're going to do instead is we're going to do a swap import. Or no, not going to do a swap import. We're going to do a copy to point. All right. And we're gonna just object merge these points that we have here, or let's just copy this whole setup that we had there. Copy it instead of variant. Let's use index. Let's use index again. All right, got index. Then let me just double check the settings for the instancer because I keep always messing that up, where it needs to be set to point instancer. Right, and now let's swap import some more stuff. Let's swap import our pig, swap import our box, and let's swap import our test geometry. All right, now let's set variant, and by index. So again, because we used index there, you can also use names, but for index, index 1, index 2. So that's similar to what I have here. You can see I have a bunch of variant. So I'm here, but I'm just loading the twig or the fire, depending on which branch there. All right, and then we can see we can just merge all of those together. I'm just double checking because some of this stuff is still a little bit new to me as well. Because again, this is the second project I've ever done in Karma. So I'd rather just double check before I do whatever. So possible prototypes, can just plug those in. And now let's refresh and hope for the best. So, all right, this does seem to it does copy them, but there's still a problem here. You can see it's not using the index attribute. So I think we need to go to options, turn off entire stage, and then index attribute. All right, there we go. So now you can see we're actually, let's make the B scale a little bit smaller so we can actually see what's going on. All right, and you can see now this is actually working. So you can see if you just set this up yourself, this is actually a lot faster to do. Let me just go in here and should be able to. You can see I can actually now just change this and it will cook real time instead of crashing. So that's why you really want to use this yourself instead of relying on the scene import. So this is really a thing that's still very clunky in the way this is set up, especially if you're dealing with just a lot of instances and stuff like that. So yeah, that's how sort of the environment and scattering stuff was set up. I did do regular instancing for the where are they? For those shrubs, and probably would have been faster to render if I had to just so it's those ones. But again, I was still like, this was for me just a learning project as well, just having fun and trying with Karma, trying to see what I could and couldn't do. But yeah, I did, by the way, also try with deep. One thing I did notice, and that's something you kind of got to keep in mind, if you're going to render volumes and you want to render with deep, it's going to make it a lot slower inside of Karma. Let me just go back to my Karma explained scene. So is the view where are their points? I think the viewport is broken again. All right, let's scene view. All right, there we go. So if you remember what I was explaining before with using the scatter on your fire and stuff. Well, and why, like if you use sort of volume limit here and it makes it slow. Well, if you're gonna render deep, if you don't know what deep is, don't worry about it. But essentially deep will sort of, it will store sort of volumetric data in a deep pass. So you can use in compositing it, you actually have the depth of your volume. Let me see if we can find a little deep pass and throw it into Nuke. So I have a thing here from some old renders. Right, deep. So there's an old render. You can see sampling here is pretty crappy. But then I can deep points. Let's see what's the one again? Deep to points. All right, deep. All right. So you can see what you get from your deep. You get the actually point. You get an actual point cloud of your sequence, and it's not grabbing the. All right, here we go. You get an actual point cloud of your thing, which can be super useful if you want to comp something in between. But, and that's why I was bringing this up. If you enable deep, essentially what it's doing is it's similar to how you're doing the volume limit. It's instead of sort of making this fast, because Karma is doing a lot of sort of tricks to make this volume rendering really fast. But those go out of the way if you start enabling deep. So that's why I didn't end up using deep for this Karma render. I wanted to experiment with deep because I'm relatively new to Nuke. I normally use Fusion. I wanted to experiment with the deep functionalities of deep. But with Karma, it literally got slower than Mantra if I enabled deep. So just something to keep in mind if you wanna try it out. I can show you maybe even. So let's just render test 1.exe. All right. So let's render first one frame here. Just regular sample. Let's path traced. Just cam one. Let's just render current frame to disk. All right. This should probably be really fast. Just copy the path. It will probably already pretty much be there. And yeah, if it's just one frame, it's gonna fire up the husk in the background. Where are you, husk? All right, there you go. But it's gonna be pretty fast, or at least it should be. Let's wait for this to do its thing. All right, maybe let's do a sequence so you can actually see how long it's gonna be per frame, because this is a little bit hard to track. So let me just end this task. So let's just press render disk. I had to reboot Houdini real quick, or at least my whole computer, because for some reason it wasn't rendering. It was really weird. Right, but you can see really fast, frame 2. And then probably frame 3 is going to be there in a little bit as well. Frame 3. You can see it's pretty fast. Oh, by the way, I need to actually put the frame padding there, else I cannot really show you what's going on. So let me just do it like that. All right, 1 second, I'll render a couple frames. All right, so a couple frames have been rendered. Let me just grab it here. All right, so it's of course nothing special, but right, beautiful. Now let me show you what happens if I were to enable deep for this. Deep output, deep camera map. Let's do the same path, but then deep. All right, and let's press render again. So now this is gonna output the same frames here, and then it's gonna output deep as well. And watch what's gonna happen. Now with Mantra there's not that big of a difference, but with Karma there's an extreme difference. So let's just wait for this to finish a frame, and then you can see the issue there. All right, so you can see it's still rendering. It's already 2 minutes in. So you can see this slows it down quite significantly. Honestly, if you need deep, at this point I would not use Karma. Mantra is faster if you want to do Pyro with deep. Like I initially set up all my renders with Mantra because I wanted to experiment with deep, but yeah, it's just with Karma it's just not worth it. I really hope that they will fix it, because I kind of feel that what it's doing is it's like all of the sort of the speed benefit that Karma gives you with like the optimizations, they get thrown out the window once you enable deep. You can see 3 minutes in, still rendering. It will probably be around 3.5 minutes. I think that was what I had when I was trying it last time, but you can see it's crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there. So if you ever run into issues and you want to do deep with Pyro, probably just keep using Mantra until this issue is resolved, because well, you can see it's it's still going. It's like 100 times slower than what it was before. Yeah, I'm just gonna abort this and then yeah, because this is not gonna go anywhere, unfortunately. All right, so let's talk about a couple of other things. Let's have a look at maybe some embers. All right, embers. Let's have a look. All right, go over here. Embers. Let's have a look at the material. So I just did that in material context. I can get rid of that, because I did not end up using that. Essentially, just what I'm doing is I have this len attribute. Again, that's the same one I used as a sort of visualizer. Remember when we did the color? I can just go back to one of the embers so I can show you. If we just go back into one of the sims. So thing that we're doing here, right, with the attributes here. Also doing the same here, by the way. But here we are using the len, which is the length of the velocity. So the faster they move, the more the more len they get. So essentially, the color is gonna be dependent on how fast they move, and then you put len in there, you put it in a ramp, and so you get a color based on the speed, and then we're just putting it in embers, some emission on there, so you can see put this color based in just in the emit color and in the base color. And apart from that, it's just very basic here. Not much to say about this. One thing that I did do is the embers are rendered at double resolution, because with very small particles, problem is of course sampling. So you can either crank up your samples quite high, or you can just double your resolution, and then you're gonna have more resolution. You can turn down the pixel samples, because remember, like let's say you want to do some depth of field based on the depth pass. If a particle is really small, you're not going to be able to get enough information from it if the resolution is really low. So let's have a look here at Nuke, for example. Let's grab one of the embers. The environment embers. Let's see where. I know it's all a little bit messy here, but whatever. So this you can see is double resolution. You can see they're still very small. And if you zoom in here, like the ones here at the front are reasonably sharp, but if you like have a look at the ones in the back, like if I were to reformat this to like smaller resolution, like there would be very little left here. As you can see, it's just now you at least got some pixels to work with. Actually, I wrote them here. So if you want to defocus them, then at some point, then it just doesn't have enough information to work with in order to properly do this. All right, some stuff here is acting a little bit weird. All right, let's try it over there. All right, so that's why you probably want to increase the resolution a little bit on stuff like that if you want to do some depth, like some compositing, depth of field, stuff like that. So yeah, all right. So there's also a thing called background fires here. I'm just gonna delete that because I didn't end up using it. I will show you what it was. I didn't end up liking it, so I didn't put it in the composite. But I made some fire in the background. Right, it looks terrible here. Let me turn off the grade. So I made some background fire and I put it sort of out of focus. And the idea was that there would be a sort of a larger fire in the background, but it just wasn't looking like, I didn't like the way it looked. So I had like a couple of trees here with some fire, but it just, even like out of, it just didn't look right. So I guess I can just delete it here as well because I wasn't using it. And oh, right, the embers, where am I actually merging the ember? All right, yeah, I merged the embers in later, so I guess this one also can go. But yeah, it's just the background elements just weren't working, so that's why I got rid of that. Aside from that, it's pretty much, well, there's a couple of things that I do want to discuss. You can see a couple fetch nodes here. The reason why I'm putting them like that, so for example, here I have some embers and I have some rob nodes here, and I want to render those with deadline. I use deadline as a render manager instead of just pressing render, I submit them to deadline. But you cannot submit these karma robs to deadline. What you need to do is you need to fetch the rob USD render that's inside of one of those karma robs. And you can fetch them from out context because over here there's no deadline, rob. So you just fetch them and then you submit them. Another thing that I noticed, if you watched my other karma tutorial I did for Solaris, I use a fetch rob there on some places, for example, to fetch stuff. So if I just have, so as you can see here, there's a couple of things crossing, and you might think, why didn't I use fetch to just fetch a object like that? Reason being is that if you do that, deadline will not work. I don't know what's up with that, but if you do that, you cannot submit renders to deadline. So if I were to do that and then submit this to deadline like this, and if I had a fetch somewhere in my lob network, it would just break. So it wouldn't submit to deadline. So I'm not sure what's up with that, but that's a thing. So yeah, so if you're gonna use deadline, keep that in mind that you need to, do some stuff there. Aside from that, well, there's volume light here. You can ignore those. That's when I was still experimenting with how to do environment lights, because I had the idea that you would need to use a volume light. So what I did is I had these volume lights, and then I put them in some of those things. I put them in candidate lights, and that wasn't working. And then from there I decided, all right, I need to probably put them in, and then I put the geometry settings and put it as a treat as light source. As you can see here, I am actually using a volume light, but actually just loading it as geometry. So you could just do what I did in my demo scene, just use it as a import it as a just scene import it, then use it as a light. There's no need to use environment lights. So the only reason why that's still there is because I used it in some of the things here. So I think that's pretty much it for just discussing the network. I know there's a lot going on, and I'm not going into every single node, explaining every single tiny thing, but it's all basically the same from what I've actually explained. So hopefully you should be able to sort of get the gist of how this all works. So we're just loading models, doing simulations, laying them out, splitting them into render nodes. Then we have the karma nodes here set up the way that I discussed in the empty scene, and we're just rendering them out. Sometimes we're doing it in lob context, like over here, where we set up the instancing. And then from there, we just render everything out, and we get a whole bunch of different renders. So let me just go to the renders. 1 second. I'm just navigating here on the right. So then you get a whole bunch of different renders here, which you can see a whole bunch, and like a lot of stuff I didn't end up using. And you can see there's also old stuff which I actually didn't use, and there's a whole bunch of different things here. So you just render out everything separately, and then you're gonna get to compositing, which is a little bit messy comp here. But again, I'm pretty new to Nuke, so there might be some stuff here. It was really just me playing around, but hopefully it's still interesting to have a look at all of this stuff. But yeah, now we're gonna get to the compositing. So that's gonna be next video, where we're gonna basically just take all these elements that I just explained how I render these, and then we're gonna composite them together inside of Nuke. I'm not gonna do a super in-depth Nuke thing, also because I am like, this is like I've used Nuke before in just doing slap comps at studios and stuff before, but I'm not super proficient with Nuke. This was me trying to get better at Nuke. So, but it's still a little, as you can see, it's quite a little bit messy. It was just me experimenting with Nuke, trying a personal project, comping it in Nuke. Initial idea was that I wanted to use Deep as well, but like I mentioned, Deep with Karma is just not working. But yeah, let's in the next and basically final video. Let me just clean this up. Oh my god, it's such a mess. It reminds me of my house. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, in the next and final video, let's just actually just dive into Nuke. Just walk through what it is that I'm doing there. And then we basically discuss the entire shot, I think. So see you next time.